I'm a big fan of RPG Maker games and their ilk. I can't say I'm always good at them, but I love them, and I love the huge variety of settings, locations, and stories that you get from these cute little pixel games. I've mentioned this numerous times on this channel, but I'm a huge fan of the pixel art style, so these are right up my alley. Death Hospital, which was made with the Wolf RPG editor, is yet another of these and a game I greatly enjoyed. It even had me swearing out loud at a few points, which is always a measure of success for me. This game is freely available to play. The synopsis states that it's a horror game set in a hospital with puzzles and escape sequences. That about sums up what you're in for with this one, so let's take a look. First of all, it's not a terribly long game. I finished it in just over half an hour, and I'm terrible at games, so most people could probably finish it a little faster, or maybe a little slower, depending on how much you really want to explore every nook and cranny. The game begins with a rather exhausted looking girl named Din finding herself in a hospital reception room. She's confused because she was just sleeping at home, so why the hell is she in a hospital now? After that brief 2-sentence explanation, you're then free to start exploring. The gameplay is rather straightforward. Look around and interact with things, and try to find a way to proceed. Although there are puzzle elements in the game, finding the way forward generally only involves finding a key or solving a small puzzle, generally a code, that will then unlock the path to the next section in a nice straight line. There are no branching paths. Once you're fully done with an area, you'll have everything you need to move on to the next part. First up, Din needs to find a key, but to get the key, she'll need a scalpel to cut open the stuffed toy that it's hidden inside. This is literally as easy as going to one room, grabbing the scalpel, then heading back to open the toy, and voila. This opens the locked door directly across from the room, and it's here that the game made me yell for the first time in a superbly timed jump scare. I also promptly died. I don't think I was in the room for even half a second before I bit the dust, and as cheap as it was, I was laughing so much that it didn't matter. I love stupid deaths like that, and getting back to that same spot, even if you haven't saved at all, will only take 20 seconds at best, so it's not like it's a cruel death either. But this moment sets you up for the rest of the game. This will happen a lot, so you better get used to it. There will be numerous rooms that you enter where you're very suddenly attacked, and unless you know it's coming, you probably won't have time to escape that first time. It's not that big of a deal because you can save whenever you want, so if you want to be extra cautious, you can save before entering every single room if you want. But chances are that even if you don't, getting back to where you were won't take long anyway. The game's length is in exploring and checking every little thing, and once you know where the key items are, getting back to them is super quick. Escaping the giant monster that attacks also isn't too hard either. The game is a little buggy, so often you can just stand there and it doesn't affect you at all. You have to actively walk into it to die. But to get rid of it, you just have to go through a room or two and it's gone. Then you're free to go back to the room it spawned in and freely explore it without fear of dying. In that first room that you unlock, you'll find a locked drawer that needs a code. This isn't too hard as you'll find a piece of paper with a code nearby, although it'll take an extra turn of the brain cogwheels to input it, meaning it's not the number directly as it appears, and just by looking at the numbers, you should realize why. Anyway, once that's done, you'll get the key to the MRI room, which is the next place we have to go and, conveniently, right next door. This gives you another key to the only other locked door in the hospital so far, and inside that room, you can power up the elevators. Naturally, it's not quite that simple, and a phone in reception starts ringing. Din picks the phone up and a voice on the other end asks why she keeps running away. This leads to the game's second hilarious jump scare / sudden death. But again, once you know it's coming, it's not too hard to get away from. At this point, I'd like to bring up probably my only real frustration with the game. A little quality of life thing. When you die, and you will die a lot, the game takes you back to the opening screen. When this happens, most games will start you automatically on the continue option, but this game doesn't. I lost count of the times I instinctively pressed enter and was sent straight into a brand new game, rather than the load game screen. There's no way out of this either, at least that I could find. You need to get through the opening parts until the first monster attack and then die before you can, carefully, choose continue on the main screen again. Either that or quit out of the game entirely. It's not a huge thing, but I must have done this at least 10 different times while playing, so having the continue option automatically highlighted after dying sure would have been nice. Once you get up the elevators, the game enters what I'll call Phase 2 and things get a little harder. It introduces a new mechanic, where there are bloody patches on the floor, and if you touch those patches, you take damage. You don't have a lot of health, so run into just a few of these and it's game over. Naturally, this ramps the level of difficulty up, knowing that at some point you're going to be chased by that giant monster again, but this time you'll need to not only avoid it, but dodge the patches on the ground as well. It's a neat mechanic, and to be honest, I had zero problem with it while escaping, but just kept randomly walking into them because of the dodgy controls, so I ended up dying a few times purely to nothing. I can't even hate, it was funny. Anyway, you'll find a safe that needs to be opened again, which means finding the code somewhere. I'm a little ashamed to admit how long it took me to realize that you can walk to the left of the main room you first enter to find more doors. So, yeah. I spent far too long exploring the one open room and getting angry that I couldn't find anything there because the answer was one screen over. Naturally, you'll get another chase scene over here, but once you get the code and open the safe, you'll get a key to the management office, the only other locked door in this section. This is a great game if you're not a huge puzzle fan or don't want to explore for 5 hours trying to find where to go, because everything is in really close quarters, and simply checking every single little thing will eventually get you what you need to move on. This marks the final part of the game, and you've got rooms to the left, right, and above, with the goal being to get the final escalator working. This needs another code, so get exploring, and of course you'll get ruffle-stomped by the giant monster again if you're not careful. There are also neat bits of flavor text around the place here that give more vague hints as to what's going on. That monster just never gives up chasing, and apparently no matter where you go, it will follow. What is it? Who knows? Probably best not to know, but either way, it has laid siege to this hospital, and if the bloodstains are anything to go by, it wasn't pretty. Once you get the escalator working, you'll find yourself in a tiny room with a single door. I need to check what's ahead, Din tells us. So, go through the door and find, an interesting party room. You can't leave, so feel free to watch them grope around for a while before facing the inevitable. Din then wakes up in her own room. Ah, it was all just a dream. There, she finds a book that has been scribbled over with black ink, although Din doesn't remember doing it herself. On her bed is a note that says, "You're next." You need to check these before the game allows you to move on, so move to the only exit here and you're given a choice. Will you lock the door or not? There are actually 2 endings, depending on what you choose. Choose no, and that giant monster will storm in and kill Din, seemingly fulfilling the threats that you find all throughout the hospital. After all, it won't stop chasing you once it has its sights on you, and you're next. If you choose yes, then Din's mother comes in instead, and comments on how wrecked you look. Thanks, Mum. But then Din notices something behind her and RIP. That's the game. As I mentioned earlier, this game is free to play, but if you can't read Japanese, it might be a bit of a struggle to work through. You will ultimately get there simply by checking everything and picking everything up, because like I said, there aren't any branching paths, but whether you'll find that fun is up to you. You don't have to go too far if you just want to experience the chase scenes for yourself, which admittedly is pretty damn fun, but if you don't mind fumbling through it, it's still a pretty fun game regardless. It has a great atmosphere, and the scares were well placed and often shocking enough to elicit an audible reaction out of me. The story is left intentionally vague, and I think that was the right choice. You'll find little notes throughout the hospital that hint at something terrible, and while it all initially seems like it was nothing more than a dream, was it really? Both endings seem to indicate that no, it wasn't, but why Lynn ended up there is anyone's guess. But atmosphere is king here, and not knowing when that giant creature is going to suddenly show up and wreck your day keeps it nice and tense as you explore an otherwise cold and empty hospital. And yeah, that's the game. You can find a link in the description if you want to try it out for yourself, and if you do, let me know what you thought of it as well. Stay safe, guys, and I'll see you again next time.